What's up, fellow fishing fanatic? I've tested 4 of the best telescopic rods on the market today, and these are my following thoughts. Number 1, the best overall for a beginner or just somebody who likes to travel with fishing rod, and that is the Kingswell rod and reel combo. It's an excellent little spinning combo. Highly recommended. I've been using it for a while and I like it. The next one is actually the Bass Pro Shops Adventure 1, and that one is for a bait caster. So if you're a bass fisherman, this is probably more for you, but it's not a rod and reel combo, so you're gonna have to buy a reel too. And number 3 is the best for kids, and that's the good old trusty Zebco 33, but this has a telescopic rod, and like I said, it's the best for kids. Highly recommend it. So my name is Wesley Littlefield, and if you find any of this information helpful, informative, and you want more of this kind of content, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe below. And of course, all the gear will be linked down in the description below, so you can click on those links and get yourself the best telescopic rod. All right, so let's get started with actually breaking down what I really liked about each rod. So to be clear, I'm not a huge fan of telescopic rods. I prefer a solid one-piece rod over a telescopic rod, but after doing a little bit SUV camping and just traveling a little bit more, I found that these kind of rods are really handy. I mean, as you can tell, they're pretty compact. I like that all of them came with a little tip protector, so you're not worried about, or not as worried about, bending, breaking an eye, breaking the tip of the rod. So that was really nice about all of them. But let's talk about the Kingswell, what I really liked about it. So the first thing that I really liked about this Kingswell rod, when you extend it, there are little lines on the rod right here that you actually want to line up, and it makes sure that your eyes here are straight. Now, if you've ever fished with a telescopic rod, you know how frustrating it can be to actually get up and make the guides or the eyes run straight. So that was probably the biggest thing that I liked about this rod. You know, besides it seems like a good quality rod to me, but that was the feature that just really stood out to me that I haven't seen on any other rods, I don't believe. So the other thing that I really liked about this rod was that it casts pretty well, considering that it's not a high dollar rod and reel. Now it is expensive, I think, for a telescopic rod. It's running at like $99, and sometimes they run specials on it so you can get it cheaper. But for $99, you can get a rod and reel combo. It isn't bad, but I've also paid $99 for, you know, one-piece rod and reel combos that I liked better. But I've caught several fish with this. I've cast little light lures with it pretty well. I've cast big, heavy lures with it pretty well. This rod specifically is a medium heavy, so it's not a lot, you know, it's not super strong, but it's also not a flimsy ultralight rod either. And I think it's just a good, solid all-around rod. And the last thing that I'm gonna mention about this, it came with a little travel bag. Yeah, that's cool, but it also came with enough room to throw in another telescopic rod in there, and reel, and a small tackle box. So kind of like what I was talking about earlier, if you're camping in a small camper or SUV or truck or something, it doesn't take up a lot of space. I've actually had this rod and reel underneath the back seat of my truck. So, and taking it out, you know, when I get a break at work or something and can run around and go fishing, I ain't got to carry around a big bolt or a longer rod, and it seems to work really well. So the next rod we're going to talk about is the Bass Pro Shops Adventure 1. So as you can tell, this rod is also compact, comes with another rod tip protector, just like the Kingswell. As a matter of fact, it's the exact same one as the Kingswell. The price of this rod itself was a little bit pricey, considering that you've still got to buy a reel, but it wasn't outrageous by any means. I want to say it was like $70 as of this recording. That could go up or down either way. That just gives you an idea of what the price is. As I mentioned, this rod comes compact. It shoots out to exactly 7 foot, so it's a 7-foot rod. Really compact for a 7-foot rod, honestly. I really like that. The price is reasonable, like I mentioned, and it casts really nice. It's got a great feel in my hand, a great balance. I would say the tip is a little bit soft for my liking. I'm not a huge fan of a really soft tip. It might be good for like a cranking rod, if that's the case. overall for just a little travel rod, it's not bad. Now the cons, there's no lines to line up the eyes, so you've got to look down and make sure that the eyes are straight, and I can see now that these clearly aren't. And so it takes a little bit of time to line them up, get them straight. Unlike with the Kingswell, where there's a line, you can just pretty much line up and go and get them pretty good. The other thing is, the eyes are pretty soft, meaning that if you bump them, you're gonna bend them. I don't like that either. Hopefully they're soft enough that you can bend them back without breaking them off. And then the last con is that it's just the rod. Like I mentioned, it's not a rod and reel combo. I had to put a different reel on here. So it's just the rod. Other than that, it's a pretty solid rod. Now let's do one for the kids. Growing up, the Zebco 33 was probably my rod of choice just because of how easy it is to cast. And that rings true with this one. Literally, your Zebco 33, it's just got a telescopic rod on it. So as with all Zebco 33s, they're really not expensive typically. I think this one's like $30 or $40 tops. So you're not gonna break the bank buying your kid a telescopic rod. They're gonna be able to go fishing with you, have a lot of fun, and still have, you know, not take up too much space, and it's gonna be compact when you need it to be compact. So the pros of the rod, like I mentioned, good price. It's a rod and reel combo, and it's easy to cast. So your kid's not gonna have any problems casting it. The reel actually comes pre-spooled, so you don't got to put line on there. Makes it real easy to pull out a little string, tie on a lure, and get to fishing for your kids. The cons, it's got a super soft tip. So I am using like a 3-ounce spinnerbait. It's a little bit heavy for this rod. It even just hanging here, it actually bends the tip of the rod. So you really don't want to fish big, heavy lures with this. Obviously it's meant for kids, so keep the lure smaller. But it actually casts this lure really well. But this is only a 6-foot rod. Now, that's really not that big of a deal for kids. Take it as a pro or con, whichever one you think. I will say that it's not as compact as the others, but it's still close. It's good enough. Overall, I mean, Zebco's one of the leaders for kids poles anyways, so go check one of these out if you've got a kid. And the last one we're gonna talk about today is the Bass Pro Shops Quick Draw. Now, this is a rod and reel combo, and it's reasonably compact. I think they could have done a little better job of shortening it up. I will say, just by looking at it, it looks like one of the cheaper rods. So if looks are a thing to you, this probably isn't the one for you. So this is a 6-foot rod. It casts fairly decently. It's actually a light power, fast action rod, and you can tell it's got a little bit of bending at the tip, and I'm really not fishing a heavy crankbait at all. So it's not terribly priced at $50 for a rod and reel combo. However, I would prefer a little bit stiffer rod, especially if you're bass fishing. Now, if you're doing like trout fishing or something, or crappie fishing where you need a little bit lighter rod, this would actually work pretty well for it. Even like bluegill, something smaller fish that you don't need all that power, this would be a good rod for that. If you use one of the links down below to buy this, you'll actually see that there are different sizes, so you don't have to get this specific model that I'm testing out. They've actually got more powerful, stiffer rods if you need that. So the two cons that I really came up with, and the biggest, was number one, there's no place to put your lure, to hook your lure once you've got it shrunk back down. There's just no place to put your lure, and it's kind of frustrating because I like to tend to leave my lures hooked up. Now, with that said, I found, you can see this little hole right here in the reel. I put it there and it works, but it's just less than ideal in my opinion. And the second con is that it's not as compact as some of the others. And so I'd like to see it be a little bit more compact. I mean, you can tell that it comes out to about right here, which is a little bit more than what the others come out to. While I don't recommend telescopic rods as your main rod and reel to use day in and day out, if you travel a lot, you might want to test out a few of these telescopic rods, and you might be surprised like I was. And now that you've picked one out, it's time to actually learn what lures to use, when to use them, everything you need to know about lures as a beginner. That video is down below me right now, and I will see you there. Until then, remember that education is important, but fishing is essential.